Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Salamangreat deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys, because this deck is a really awesome deck to play around with. I really love the way this deck actually plays, and it's one of the best decks that came out of the entire Link Vrains era. This deck is a deck that I wouldn't hesitate to carry to a locals, or even a regionals and compete, especially with this build. So, without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell near so you can come part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards like getting your name description single video, getting a signed cards mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month your patron along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing just a single copy of Gazelle, because Gazelle is still unfortunately at 1. This card is one of the best cards in the entire main deck, and has the ability to, if a Salamangreat monster is sent to the graveyard, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. And if this card is normal or special summon, you can send a Salamangreat card from your deck to the graveyard, which is really good because it basically is a free special summon, and it's a Foolish Burial, so this card is a definite one of in the deck. I wish we could play more than one of it, but currently it's still at 1. We then play 3 copies of Salamangreat Spinny. Salamangreat Spinny to me is a 3 of right now. This card is a really good card. I bounce between 2 and 3 in this deck, but right now I'm really liking playing 3 of this card, but it has the ability, if you control a Salamangreat card, you can discard this card from your hand to target a face-up monster on the field, and it gains 500 attack until the end of the turn. And if you control a Salamangreat monster other than another copy of Spinny, and this card's in the graveyard, you can special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. This card is a great extender for the deck to be able to just give you basically a free special summon, and it boosts the monster up by 500 attack. We then play 3 copies of Salamangreat Foxy. So Salamangreat Foxy is a really good card as a starter. It has the ability, when this card is normal summon, you can excavate the top 3 cards of your deck, and if you do, you get to add 1 excavated Salamangreat card from your deck to your hand and shovel the rest back into the deck. And if this card is in your graveyard and a face-up spell or trap is on the field, then you get to discard a Salamangreat card to special summon this card back to your side of the field, which is really, really good. Then you can destroy a face-up spell or trap on the field. So this card is a fantastic card in the deck as a 3 of. I keep bouncing again, kind of like with Spinny, back between 2 and 3 of this card, but right now I'm really liking, with this particular build, playing 3 copies of it, especially with us being able to play Mirage Stallion. We then play 2 copies of Jack Jaguar. This card is really, really good in the deck because it has the ability, if this card attacks a defense position monster, you inflict piercing damage to your opponent. And if you control a Salamangreat Link monster while this card's in the graveyard, you can target a Salamangreat monster in your graveyard except another copy of itself, shovel that target into the deck, and if you do, special summon this card to a zone that that Salamangreat Link monster points to. So playing Jack Jaguar is really, really good as a 2 of in this deck because this card helps out a lot to be able to special summon it onto your side of the field. I'm really liking 2 copies of this card because it's an overall fantastic extender in the deck. We then play a single copy of Falco. Falco is very similar to your copy of Jaguar, but it has the ability, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target a Salamangreat spell or trap in the grave and set that target to your field. And if this card is in your graveyard, you can target a Salamangreat monster you control and then return that target to the hand, and if you do, special summon this card. So it's a really good card, but it also bounces your monsters back to your hand, which is a little bit unfortunate, but I still really like this card as a 1-up. I then play a single copy of Salamangreat Fowl. Fowl is a good extender to me. I really like this card in this deck because it has the ability that if a Salamangreat monster except another copy of itself is normal or special summoned to your side of the field, then you can special summon this card from your hand to your side of the field as well. So basically it's a really good, kind of like Kage to Kage monster that special summons itself to your side of the field, and also has the ability that you can send a Salamangreat card from your hand or face and reveal to the graveyard to target a set spell or trap your opponent controls, and that set card cannot be activated this turn, so it can basically let you out certain cards that you know your opponent's going to have in the back row, or it forces them to activate them. So for the other copies of the Cyverse extenders in the deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of Sea Archiver. This card is just an additional summon to your side of the field, because if a monster is normal or special summoned to a zone link monster points to, then you can special summon this card from your graveyard if it was there, or from your hand, even if it was not in the graveyard, to your side of the field, but you can only use each of this card's effects once per turn. This card is a great card as an extender for the deck to help us go into a copy of our Mirage Stallion, or to go into Link Climbing. We then play 3 copies of Flame Buffalo. Flame Buffalo I really like as a 3 of. I've always liked 3 copies of Flame Buffalo because this card is basically Pot of Greed. Because it lets you, if this card is faceable on the field, or if it leaves the field for any reason, you discard a Cyverse card, and then if you do, you get to draw 2 cards. Now, why do I say this card is a Pot of Greed if you have to discard? Well, a lot of your Salamangreat monsters function when they're in the graveyard. Like your copy of Spinny functions in the graveyard, your Foxy functions in the graveyard. Any of the monsters in the top row, except for Fowl, really function in the graveyard graveyard. So this card comes in very, very handy. Even the Sea Archiver can special summon itself. So sometimes you will get that free draw 2 off of this card, which is really, really good. We then play 3 copies of Parallel Xyz. Parallel Xyz is really good because you're playing a link-based deck, so you can special summon this card to its own link monster points to, and then special summon out an additional link monster or Parallel Xyz to your side of the field from your deck. They do both become level 4 on your side of the field, but they do really help out when you link summon, just basically getting 2 more extenders on your side of the field. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom, just to make it so your opponent can't touch the deck, which is really helpful for this deck to be able to do, just to kind of control your opponent where they can't go in for searches. And then we play 3 copies of Nibiru to really shut down the opponent. This card comes in very, very handy to throw to your opponent and then basically go, hey, now I've broken your board, because this deck does have a little bit of a problem breaking boards once your opponent's established. So the Nibiru totally helps out with that, where you can totally deal with your opponent's entire field. So the Nibiru is a definite 3-of to me in this particular deck and helps out a lot, because you're going to be able to just give them that Nibiru and out the entire board of special summons that they're going to be trying to do against this deck. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Salamangreat Sanctuary. This card is searchable in the deck off your copy of your Baylings, and has a really good card effect that if you link summon a Salamangreat Link monster, you can use a Salamangreat Link monster you control with the same name as the entire material to link summon that monster. So for example, if I'm trying to link summon a copy of Heat Leo, and I have a Heat Leo already on the field, I can actually use a Heat Leo to summon the Heat Leo, because some of your monsters have the ability to reincarnate Link Summon, where they gain additional effects once they've been link summoned using a monster with the same original name, like your copy of your Sunlight Wolf and your Heat Leo. So this card comes in very handy for that. This card also has the ability, if your monster battles, you can pay 1,000 life points, target a link monster you control, and makes attack 0, and if you do, gain life points equal to the original attack of that monster, which can help you out in certain situations. We then play a single copy of Salamangreat Circle. I definitely see this card going back to 2, maybe on the next list. What this card does is it's basically the Rhoda of the deck that lets you add a Salamangreat monster from your deck to your hand, which is the main effect that you're going to be using with this card. We then play 2 copies of Pot of Desires. I don't like 3 in this deck because you play so many 1-ofs in this deck that I usually end up banishing copies of my Gazelles and stuff like that. I like it as a 2-of because I never go and activate a copy of Desires and then draw a Desires from one, because I'm only playing 1 more copy of it. And overall, I find that if I play 2, that it works really well for me. You can play 3 in the deck. I'm just not a big fan of it. We then play 2 copies of Will of the Salamangreat. So this card is a card that I did think about bumping up to 3, but this card overall to me right now is just a 2-of. It's a really good card in this deck and has a really great effect that during your main phase you can special summon a Salamangreat monster from your hand or graveyard, which is basically a monster reborn, and then you can send this card from your field to the graveyard and then target a Salamangreat Link monster you control that was link summoned using a monster with the same name as a material, and then special summon monsters that are Salamangreat monsters from your hand or graveyard in defense position up to the link rating of that card. So for example, you can send this card from your side of the field to the graveyard, target a Heat Leo, and then you get to special summon that back 3 copies of Salamangreat monsters from your graveyard, which is really good. But I just feel like 2 copies is totally fine, because I never want to see a second copy of this card in my hand, because it is a once per turn. We then play 3 copies of Signet Mining. Signet Mining is really good in this deck too, because you are playing a Cyverse deck, and it lets you send a card from your hand to the graveyard to add a level 4 or lower Cyverse monster from your deck to your hand. So that's it for the spells. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Salamangreat Rage. This card is really good in the deck. It gives you pops on the field because it has the ability to activate one of these effects. Either send a Salamangreat monster in your hand or face your field to the graveyard, target a card on the field and destroy it, or target a Salamangreat Link monster you control that was link summoned using a monster with the same name as a material, and destroy cards your opponent controls up to the number of link ratings it had. This card is a fantastic 2-up. I love playing it at 2, especially since I'm playing the copies of Pot of Desires in this deck, so this card comes in very, very handy as a 2-up. We then play 2 copies of Salamangreat Roar. Roar is a great 2-up as well. This card has the ability that when a spell or trap or monster effect is activated, you can negate the activation while you control a Salamangreat Link monster, and negate the activation if you do destroy that card. And then when this card is in the graveyard, if a Salamangreat Link monster is link summoned to your field using a monster with the same name as a material, you can set this card but banish it when it leaves the field. So this card is a great extender for the deck to basically give you negations against your opponent and be able to just put it back on your field. And it's a really good control card to be able to go into, and it's easily searched in the deck. We then play 3 copies of my personal attack, which is 3 copies of Rivalry of Warlord. Since we're playing so many Cyverse monsters, especially in the extra deck and in the main deck, you basically don't play anything in the main deck except for Nibiru that is a monster that is not a Cyverse monster. So this card comes in very handy, because it can help you control those really insane boards that your opponent might be making, because each player can only control one type of monster, and you send all face-up monsters on the field to the graveyard, so each player can only control one type. So we're going to obviously pick Cyverse, and whatever our opponent's playing, if they're playing a bunch of different types in a deck, this is basically going to shut down their field where they can only have one type. So this card comes in very, very handy in this deck, and I am absolutely loving this card as a 3-of in this deck. It has won me so many games. So that's it for the traps, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Heat Leo. 2 copies of Heat Leo is the best in this deck because you're going to be using one to go into the other one. And the reason I'm playing both artworks is because basically you summon this one first, and then I summon this one, and that's how I remember that it has been reincarnate summoned, which is really, really helpful to have the alternative artwork to always remember that. But it has the ability that if this card is link summoned, you can target a card in your opponent's spell and trap card zone and shuffle it into the deck. And then once returned during your main phase, if this card was link summoned using a Salamangreat Heat Leo as a material, then you can target a face-up monster on the field and 1 monster in the graveyard, and the attack of the first monster becomes equal to the attack of the second monster, which is really good to be able to use your copies of your Balinks in the graveyard to be able to manipulate the attack points of a monster on the field down to all the way down to like 500. We then play 3 copies of Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf. Sunlight Wolf is one of the best link monsters in the entire extra deck. It has some really insane effects that basically, if a monster is normal or special summoned to a zone this card points to, then you get to add a fire monster from your graveyard to your hand. But for the rest of the turn, you cannot normal summon or set or special summon monsters with the added monster's name. And then during the main phase, if you control this card that was link summoned using a Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf as a material, you get to add a Salamangreat spell or trap from your deck to your hand, or graveyard to your hand, which can be your copies of your Rage, your copies of Circle. It just is a really good card to be able to grab those cards and be able to put them back on your side of the field. So then we play 3 copies of Salamangreat Balinks. Balinks is a great 3-of in this deck. It has the ability that if this card is link summoned, you get to add a Salamangreat Sanctuary from your deck to your hand. And if a Salamangreat card you control would be destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can manage this card from your graveyard instead, which basically protects all of your Salamangreat monsters from card effects that are going to destroy them. We then play a single copy of Access Code because this card is pretty much the boss monster of the extra deck. You're going to be making this card all the time in this deck. I will say, if you're trying to build a more budget Salamangreat deck, because Salamangreats are not the most expensive rogue-ish tier 2 deck, but you can build it without the access code and play a Borreload in the deck, which is a way the deck used to be played before access code was even released, which is an option for you guys if you want to play it, because Borreload is like $1. We then play a single copy of Transcode Talker. Transcode Talker is a definite 1-of in this deck, because when this card is co-linked, it is co-linked monsters gain 500 attack. And also your opponent cannot target any of them with card effects. And then you can target 1 link 3 or lower Cyverse monster in the graveyard except to the copy of itself and special summon to a zone this card points to. You can't special summon monsters when you activate this effect except for Cyverse monsters, which is totally fine because the majority of the time we're just summoning Cyverses anyways in this deck. We're then playing a single copy of Update Jammer. Update Jammer is fantastic in this deck because it has the ability that once per battle during the damage calculation, if a Cyverse monster battles quick effect, you can activate this effect to negate all other effects on the field until the end of the damage step. And then, after the damage calculation is applied, it makes it so that the monster, or before the damage calculation is applied, it makes it so the attack events of the monster become the original attack events, which is really good. And also, if the opponent's monster is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, inflict 1,000 points of damage to your opponent. But the really good effect of this card is if this card is sent to the graveyard as a link material for the link summon of a monster, the monster that used this card as a link material gets to attack twice during each battle phase, which is really good to be able to use the copy of Access Code Talker with this to get the Access Code Talker all the way up to like 53 and then attack twice with Update Jammer. We then play a single copy of Splash Magician. Splash Magician is a great card in the deck as well because you get to target one Cyberse monster in the graveyard and special summon it back to your side of the field, which just is a great way to be able to link climb in this deck. We play a single copy of Link Rebo. This card is just an extender for the deck because if your opponent activates a trap card, quick effect, you contribute this card, negate the effect, and if you do, banish the card that they activated. And if this card is in the graveyard, you contribute a Ad Ignister, but you're never going to get that effect of this card to special summon this card back to your side of the field. It's basically just here to be a dark monster to be able to use with your Access Code Talker because you're already playing Fire, Earth, Wind, Water, and Dark. The only thing you're not playing is Light in the extra deck, so you have a lot of different cards that you can banish for the copy of Access Code Talker. We're then playing a single copy of Mirage Stallion. Mirage Stallion is really good in the deck. I'm really glad that we got this card back, and what this card does is you detach a material from this card to special summon a Salamangreat monster from your deck in defense position, and also you cannot activate monster effects for the rest of the turn, except fire monsters. And if this Link Summon or XZ Summon card is sent to the graveyard, you get to target one monster on the field and return it to the hand, which is really, really good just to be able to bounce those cards. We then play a single copy of Abyss Dweller just to shut down graveyards, which is the last card of the extra deck. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed. It's a really awesome deck to play with. I really love Salamangreats because they're a very budget option if you guys are looking for a deck outside of the copy of the Access Code Talker, which you can drop if you want to. The only thing you got to watch out for is the copy of Rivalry of Warlords. If you do decide to drop that card, it should be getting a reprint any day now. I hope, but at some point that card should be getting a reprint. But if it doesn't get a reprint for a long time, you guys can definitely change it out for Borreload or Bowl Sword for another boss monster. But other than that, the deck is relatively cheap. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can come part of the notification squad, and definitely tell me what you think of this deck down in the comments down below. And we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.